everybody. Welcome to the Improv Summit. I'm your host, Spencer. And with me today, I've got Nate. Nate, how's it going?
Woo! Hey, how's it going, Spencer? I'm good.
Good. Great. So we're just going to dive right in. People don't want to hear me talk so much because I keep saying the same things over and over. Let's get to know you, Nate. Tell me a little bit about your improv background.
Well, I started improv around 2010, I believe. Well, that's when I started improv in earnest. I had done Groundlings prior to that. I don't remember the year, maybe 2007, maybe 2008, but I did Groundlings. I did it the first level. I did not pass. I was gonna have to retake it. I retook it. Both of my teachers, both times with the same teacher, Stephanie Courtney, who is the progressive girl, the flow progressive, progressive woman. And she's a progressive woman. But she was wonderful. The class was a little overwhelming in the sense of their style of improv. At the time, I didn't know that there were many other styles of long form improv. So when I went into Groundlings, I didn't have any idea of options. So I thought that what they were telling me was the only way to do improv, I guess. And I didn't do a lot of research. And I mean, I knew about Second City, but I really hadn't really wrapped my head around what long form was. My buddy, who was also in that class, who I went to college with, he then started going to IO and Improv Olympic, and he told me that I should come over and check it out because basically we both, and other people in the class, but kind of stepped away after, the second time when I retook level one. I misspoke. I also then did take level two. I forgot that. Yeah, I took level two, did not pass that, and then I had to take a break because of money. And also I wasn't sure what was going on because I just wasn't sure if I was cut out for this thing that I thought I would be really, really decent at. So when I went to IO and saw him in a show, I was like, oh, this is completely different than what they do at Groundlings, and then I started educating myself on why, and then I started taking classes there. And so it was a couple-year break. Then I took IO. I did all the levels. Back in 2010, it was, I want to say I think it was 7 levels back then. I think it was 7 levels because they changed that while I was there.
And then when I took it, it was 1 through 5B.
Right, exactly. There was
so it became 6, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I took the classes and I loved it, and I felt like that's where my natural ability was able to fuse with what they were teaching. And they were definitely more of a you bring your strengths and talents and you bring that to our stage, and let's all make it work together with different people and different styles. Whereas like there's other schools of thought, Groundlings being one of them, they're trying to home something. They're trying to see if you're the type of player they want. And then it seems to me like they're trying to shape you into being their style. So they have a brand, and IO was more like, I think when I talk to people about it, I feel like I explain it like IO was about strictly the improv. Whereas as Groundlings was like, yeah, improv's how we start, how you're going to like get inducted into this, but we're going to quickly do sketch and big character. And, it's very character focused there. And then UCB is a mix of both. I think UCB, sketch and improv. But UCB has a very, I guess, analytical style on stage with the way they do things. Like it's very heady. I don't even know if heady is the right word. It's just very witty. It's very, you can talk your way out of scenes. Whereas I feel like IO just kind of like, it's the playground. It's like you can really, you utilize all your skills. Not to say the other schools were or are not worth their salt. They just weren't for me. And so I did all of IO. And then I auditioned for a Herald team. I got on a Herald team when I was in level 5, but it was DCT Herald team. Back then, that's what they called them. I know they changed the kind of like what those are called and how that works later. But so I did. So there were DCT teams, and there was a whole block of DCT Herald teams on Friday nights. So every Friday I'd go and I really cut my teeth back there, learning how to have a scheduled show every week. And very quickly did I progress in the things that I learned in the way I approached improv, as opposed to just taking class, and not performing. So also, I guess I missed this. This is actually probably more important in my growth. My friend, RC Phil's his name. The guy who had taken Groundlings with me and went to college with, he had said his advice was, when I started classes at IO, try to form an indie team as soon as possible, so you get yourself on stage. And that honestly was that was some of the best advice I got in starting out, because it's one thing to learn it, in class. You got this very, very healthy, hopefully, assumably healthy environment where people are giving feedback, and it's very let's hold each other's hand, and that was great, and what do we think about this scene? But being in front of an audience, there's no other way to cut your teeth. That's where you understand how you relate and interact with everybody else in the room. To, teammates and audience included.
Yeah, and getting those reps in, I've learned, is such a big thing, because learning improv in class is like a specific skill, but then doing improv in front of people without the class mindset is also like a separate type of improv. And I also learned, this whole thing where everyone says fail big in improv. The first time I failed in improv, where I was like, I don't know what's going on in this scene, I don't feel like it's going well, was in front of an audience. And then at that point on, I was like, well, at this point, I can't get any worse.
I mean,
so
that's the thing. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so so that's what I love. Thank you for all those specifics of this person and all the different trainings you have, which kind of leads me into this question of, in general, because improv is such this thing that you have to be like, I want to do improv, or I want to try it, or whatever. And there's always the idea of, actors being like, my manager said I have to take a class, or my agent said this, or, whatever. But aside from that, which, I mean, everyone has that kind of thing. That's how I started. I was like, I need to just take an improv class. And then here I am graduating all the LA programs. But what drew you to improv, or what really made you continue? What drew you to improv, and what kept you continuing in the programs that you were taking?
Well, that's a good question. I as I look back, which I sometimes will ask myself, especially when we weren't in this pandemic. It's because the improv is, you get to a certain point where you make it on a team, or you've been playing with a team for a while, and then people ask, what's your end goal? What do you want to do with this? And that is less important to me than what is happening right now. I'm choosing to do it now because I'm having fun. Well, all right, let me back up. When I was growing up, I felt, I hung out with friends and stuff, and we would do, I guess, make believe and stuff like that. I'm going really young, but that stuff never left me. I really enjoyed that. And I'm not an only child, but my brother and sisters were already out of the house by the time I was kind of in grade school. And so I had I guess the benefits of a lonely child, or disadvantages, however you want to call it. But so I had alone time, but then I also had a decent amount of friends to hang out with. But I really did enjoy alone time, and that is something that I've learned throughout the years, that some people really need, this surrounded by friends, and some people really like not being around a bunch of people. They want to be alone. Improvisers seem to be the mixed bag of that, but a lot of improvisers I've met are really introspective. They really, they examine themselves a lot. Feel like I have that quality. But I was very staunch when I was a kid about always having fun. I don't want to do things unless it's fun. And whereas you can't always, not everything in life is going to be fun. I mean, even if you try to mentally say, okay, I'm going to enjoy this, that it can help. But I felt like I looked at it, I saw a lot of things around me that seemed seemingly boring, and then trying to trying to make something fun out of it, kind of. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that idea of like, I don't want to stop being funny or doing things that make me laugh, or being involved in things that make me laugh. So when I got out to LA, I wish so I went to a film school. I didn't go to regular college, and they did, so there's no program there for like theater or anything like that. If I'd gone to regular college, I'm pretty sure I would have been exposed to improv. The only improv I had been exposed to prior to LA, was Whose Line Is It Anyway on TV. Actually, the old British version, which used to run syndication on Comedy Central, and I loved it. I loved it. In fact, and I guess we did. There was improv games at my high school theater. There wasn't like an improv class or anything. And again, I didn't know what long form was, so I thought Whose Line was kind of like it. So I would my mind was wrapping around trying to just be as quick as possible, because in Whose Line they're so fast. But there's a formula there, as you do so many improv games, and then you start. It's just, you can't not like pick up patterns and whatnot. So when I found long form, it was like, oh, this is kind of encompassing like all these small ideas that I've had, or like sort of philosophies of my life, of like how I always want to have fun, and I want to like infuse this element and that element. What I love about improv, honestly, what keeps me doing it, the thing that also it feels so healthy for me, is it works at its best when you are listening to your other person, to your scene partner or your team, like when you're all working together, as opposed to trying to do your own thing. Like if I'm trying to be like funny, if I'm just trying to be funny, that is going to be a different, it's going to change what's happening on stage in maybe a subtle way, but also in a way of, well, and it could be funny to the audience, but then you're missing what will be, I know, in my opinion, usually it's almost 100% of the time always better. It's better when you're working with somebody else's ideas and you get to build together, because I'm much more interested in making a choice, or seeing someone else make a choice, responding to their choice, and then we're building together on something that neither of us had preconceived notions on. Because if I had an idea and I was gonna execute this idea, and I did it and it was fun, but I don't know how you feel about this, and I mean this is different for everybody, I'm sure, but me approaching me trying to execute something that I think that I had kind of in my head. I try not to pre-plan on the sidelines, but sometimes, you get inspired and then it's like, well, the scene's still going, so I'm gonna hold that and bring it in next scene or whatever. And it's fun, like when you come in and you land something that you thought of, but the reward wasn't as nearly as great as the reward when you come in with an idea, or even come in with a half idea, or being like, I got nothing, I'm just gonna listen and just respond. That is more exciting to me and yields more, I guess, more reward, for lack of a better term. I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for, but it's a better playing field. Anyway, so to answer your, like, I don't know if I'm answering your question or if I'm going off too much, but like the idea of make believe has never left me in the child sense, and so I'm actually really surprised that I found something that actually facilitates that and helps perpetuate it. And what I was going to say earlier was I gained so much from improv when I started improv classes, and I allowed myself to be open to them beyond Groundlings. I mean, when I started it in earnest in 2010, I very quickly met like-minded people. I started having a lot of fun. Like, me wanting to be on a main stage team was not because I wanted a better career path for myself. It's because I wanted to be playing with the best people. I wanted to be playing with people who I didn't have to worry about. I knew they were listening. I'm listening. I mean, we all have our moments of not listening. It doesn't matter how good you are, but we're striving for something, and that's what I love about it. Like it's the people, and I'm gonna make what sounds like probably a judgment, but people that are doing it just for their career, just to write it down on their resume, especially in classes. Usually they don't always go to. Usually, if you want to be on a team, it takes enough time that you have to put
Sure.
the effort in, you know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
on their like they just want it on as a resume builder. Those people seem to not be as they don't listen as well all the time, and it's not everybody. Like you said, if you started out like needing it on your resume or wanting it, it's a great skill to have for acting. I hope that people that are putting it on their resume and just doing it for that reason, I hope they're really listening in class and really taking the ideas, because all of that can be applied to every audition. It doesn't matter how many words you have to memorize. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's it. I was just gonna ask you, does that make sense? Is what I was gonna ask.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it does. And actually, I'm gonna flip the questions around a little bit because this kind of leads into one of the other questions. So, improv is very beneficial for acting and for entertainment, but improv, you talked about listening. You listen every day in your life, no matter what you do for a career. So, what are some elements of improv that you feel can like kind of across the board be beneficial for whatever career path someone is doing, like taking, like you've done like corporate improv, like what are some of those kind of tricks and tools and elements that it's like, oh, listening, you listen all the time, so listening is something you do in improv. What are some of those kind of elements that you feel like people, it benefits people in their daily life?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, it's like it. I've when I started, I think it was my level 1, maybe it was my level 2, but somebody was in class. She was there. She was a nurse.
Hmm.
She was just taking improv classes to be more mindful, and I guess she didn't use the word mindful. She was just taking him to be able to talk to people better, talk to her patients, people at the hospital, whatever. I think that it homes in that skill of recognizing that there's somebody else in the room, recognizing, like, because so many people when they're talking, or when they're listening, quote unquote, in our everyday experience, I feel like you can see them kind of like check out for a second. They're looking at you, but they're thinking about something else. I mean, I don't know. I'm not calling them out and being like,
Right.
listening to what I'm saying, unless I guess I'm telling them something they need to know. But listening, it's not just with the ears. Improv taught me about listening with your whole body. Like you're listening to someone else's body language. You're listening to the inflection of how they're saying something. You're listening to the tone of what they're saying. You're listening, yes, the words, but then everything has subtext. I mean, I don't know of an example at this moment that there's something that doesn't have subtext, because even if someone's trying to not put subtext into what they're saying, that means that they mean something. They're trying to do something, so that there's meaning to that that's deeper than what they're saying. So that's what improv, when I feel like when people are truly listening, it's not just listening for what my partner is saying, but also what does this mean to me? You know, what is the I guess the subtext. There's another word that I'm misplacing as well, but yeah, what are they really trying to tell me? Like, if somebody's asking, like if this might not be a great example, but if we're going out to dinner, and I'm like, you want to get, and I'm like, we're going to that Italian place, right? And you're like, yeah, great, I can't wait. And you're like, and if you want burgers, that's fine. It seems like you're saying to me, you know what, just so you know, there's other options. And, I know you like burgers, Nate. So if you want to have a burger, that's great. But what I feel like the subtext is probably saying is, actually, I'm not into Italian, Nate. I really actually want to have a burger. But you're presenting it in a way that it seems like it's for me. So then it's like, if I'm not picking up on the subtext, I'll be like, no, I don't need a burger. Let's go. Yeah, I'm fine with spaghetti, or whatever. And then it's like we're being too polite, and we're not actually saying what we mean at that point. Or the person who's being talked to is just not listening as well. That's not to say that, I mean, human beings have so much going on all the time in their heads. I mean, we've got all of our whole body, it's like every moment it can change your mood. Like there's so much happening. So when I'm on stage the easiest way for me to listen is to stop doing all of that personal check-in stuff and trying to really focus on the other people on stage or in real life. it helped me immediately, like being like very present, you know, like face to face with somebody, as opposed to like listening to them, especially in a job situation when I'm not having a good day or I don't enjoy the job. Really listening to the other person and
Right.
just, you know, and then you might not have to speak to the subtext of what they're saying, but you can still respond back with a tone that you might not have if you hadn't really heard them,
Mm-hmm.
and then that tone will then ease them, like your subtext will then ease their whatever's going on with them. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, a situation that I have no example for, but I just
Sure.
feel like, yeah, I feel like it that is probably the thing that it helped me with the most. I don't know, it's hard to quantify that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, being present period was has always been I don't know if it's trouble, but that's always something that is happening with me, is like, am I able to be present in a situation, whether I got stuff going on or not? You know, if I'm analyzing something, it's very tough to be in an improv scene and analyze it and react earnestly at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Mm-hmm.
or honestly rather, but like to act like in the same moment. You know, so it's like you're
Yeah.
at that duality, and now you're splitting yourself off, and then you're not going to be fully present. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of
And
thing.
that's a good point, because one thing that I've learned through improv is, like, I always feel like, oh, I listen. I'm a listener. I wouldn't say I'm a good listener necessarily, but I'm a listener. I listen to what people say. But I've also learned that there's an idea of being a listener and then being a heightened listener.
Hmm.
Where, as that heightened listening, it feels like with improv, I am literally listening to everything that one person's saying, because they're making it up as they go, and we don't always necessarily remember what we say even right after we say it. And I just took an improvised Shakespeare class,
Wow.
and I mean, I'm not like great with Shakespeare. I wouldn't say I'm even great at improv, but what I learned from that class, more or less than the dialect and everything, is that because the dialect is so specific, when I get thrown into a scene and it's like, okay, do this scene, I have to really listen to my scene partner, because I have to know what they're saying, not
Mhm.
only just in general, but because of the dialect, I have to literally be like, okay, what are you saying? And how do I translate that into my brain to modernize what I'm saying and then spit it back out,
Right.
a response in that dialect. And so it became so heightened to me, where I'm like, yeah, I'm listening in all these improv scenes, but in something like a Shakespeare improv, I had to literally just be like, okay, you're saying words that I don't know what you're saying, but based on the context clues of what you're saying and the way you're reacting and how
Mhm.
your physicality is, I picked up on what you're saying. Now I have to
Right.
respond in the way that my character would react to that. Versus, like, okay, you're saying something, but I have this thing I want to say. I'm starting to prep what I want to say. It was really showing the idea of heightening, and I think that they're or heightened listening.
Mhm.
I think that that's what something is. People are always like, I'm a good listener. It's like, you're not a good listener until you've listened in improv.
I mean, truly, like exactly. And that's, I mean, you just explaining like that's right there. I've never taken a Shakespeare improv Shakespeare, but I definitely would, because that's exactly what that would help, you know,
Mhm,
like with that, because yeah, interpreting, filtering, and then having to spit it back out through a
mhm.
filter, like you don't have time to pre-plan.
Right, and it's full undivided attention, like, even because I'm generally like a left brain, like, give me a Herald, I can tell you all the parts of it, I can tell you what beats we need to bring back. Wouldn't necessarily say that, like, my scene work is the greatest, but I'm so left brain. But, like, with something like that, I can't even think about, okay, what I'm doing after this class, I have to literally just sit there and,
Uh-huh.
like, watch and listen to what this person's doing. I have to literally clear my mind, because if I'm just like, if I'm like, okay, you're saying words, and I think about, like, oh, it's 2:30 right now or whatever, and then I'm all of a sudden I've missed two words, and now I've completely missed the context.
Oh
And
man,
so it's
there's nothing. Well, there probably is something more or fearful. Definitely is on stage, but man, when I feel like, oh, I just missed everything they just said, like because I'm thinking about something,
Mhm,
or they say, or I listened to the beginning, but then I missed the ending. And
mhm.
then I don't know how to respond, and we're on stage and we're live and the audience is there, and then you're just having to kind of go with it. But like the worst is trying to come up with something to say when you don't know what you're responding to. And
Mhm.
you know, it's better just to be like, as your character, I didn't hear you. What did you say? Like, rather than trying to like
Right.
fake it, you know?
The old I'm sorry, what?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's
Well,
better
I mean,
than
and I've done that when I've literally listened to what someone said. They'll say something, and I'm like, I'm so deep into it that I literally miss what they said because I'm trying to
yeah,
focus
right.
so hard. And
Hmm.
then they like say something, and I'm like, "You're done," and I was supposed to say something. What? What did you just say?
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's also another that's just a pitfall of like heavily analytical people when
mhm,
on stage trying to tell yourself to listen hard, and now you're half listening because you're in the middle of giving yourself the note to listen, and
mhm,
it's really bizarre. And then it's like the more reps you get on stage, you work that out. Like those kind of
mhm.
habits, they will die out, you know, as long as you have a great coach and you're recognizing. I don't even know if you need a coach to recognize certain pitfalls of improv.
Sure. Well, you actually were my coach for 5B back at IO. And one thing I remember, which will kind of lead into this next question, one thing I remember is at one point, someone, I don't remember who it was in that class, but one of my team members said to me, they said, "You don't come out on stage that often. You need to like just like get yourself out there and do something." And I literally said, "Just pull me on stage. I'm so focused on everything else that I'm just forgetting to actually go on stage and like do a two-person scene." And so I just was like, just like literally just grab me and pull me on stage. I really don't care. It wasn't that I was like terrified of doing it. It was more that I was just like, okay, we're doing it. We're doing this kind of a form. So after these two scenes, we're doing this, and then I could bring this. I'm thinking that because of my left brain. I'm so into that
Right.
mindset. And then people were just like, okay, great. And then they would literally say like, Ron, and they would like literally like do this and like bring me. I'm like, oh, okay, you want me to come out on stage? Got it. Because I'm so focused on the supporting stuff that
Hmm.
I didn't think about. And then eventually I was able to, after going through IO and Second City and UCB and comedy sports, I was able to kind of be like, okay, left brain, calm down for a second. Let me get in there. And so I'm able to balance it a little bit better than I was before. But I
Hmm.
think that that's one thing that I think people, when you're playing on a team, is of course knowing people's strengths and weaknesses. Where like my strength is I can give you an out like that. I can sweep at it like nobody's business. I have those instincts.
That's
But to
important.
just go on stage and do a scene, I'm so like just literally pull me out on stage. I have no problem once I'm out on stage doing a scene. It's just I just forget to go on
That's
stage because
such
I'm
a
so
rare issue to have.
yeah. It's like either I'm the sideline or I'm the top, and so that's one thing. But
Mhm.
in that regard of this like strengths and weaknesses of different your teammates and everything, what to you makes a good improviser? I know that's a loaded question, but like what makes a good improviser?
Um, well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of answers here. I'll try to be as concise as I can because I'm not
Sure.
known for concision. I will
It's all good.
say, um, the more that I think that answer has changed through time as I've done it.
Hmm.
Um, and it is very interesting to watch improv uh, with people who maybe don't do it, and then see a show. So let's just take an example, like at Second City. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this, but once I did IO, I was on Herald teams there, and then it eventually got defunct. It died, and then I went over
And
to
now
Second
it's
City.
now it's really died.
Yeah, well, the sign's still up. I heard the sign's still
Yeah.
up and on. That's so
Well,
funny.
Chicago's gone too now, so
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I went over to Second City, and I didn't start classes there, but they had auditions. So I was on a house team there before COVID hit. Um, so I was at Second City and we were watching a team that I'd seen so much. And I don't remember who was with me, but it was people that hadn't done improv. And they loved this player. And this player was very funny, super funny player, though I had seen this player do the same move like
mm,
week after week, or the same style of move, to a point where it was that's what I know that player for doing, kind of thing. And they loved it. But if they went back the next week, I mean, I don't know, maybe they love it the next week, but you see it enough, it's like
mhm,
someone I might think is really strong and in an improv scene might not have the same quality over time if that's all they can do. So so noticing like the best improv player, I mean, I don't know if I can say the best. And I probably did this when I was told you my philosophy when I was coaching, but I don't believe in improv that there's necessarily good and bad. I think it's just weak and strong, so
mhm,
because so many judgments go into personal judgments, or they go into improv. It goes on stage. It shouldn't, but sometimes it does. Audience judging and whatnot, and players thinking that what they did, because they didn't get this certain response that they expected from the audience, then they did something bad. Maybe it's just that the audience just stunk. That audience just was it not a the audience, they reacted to that because they had just seen another show like right before yours, or another team that had just come out and done something, and that put a bad taste in their mouth, and now they're not laughing at much, or it's really hard to get them to laugh, or whatever the situation is. But I think the strongest improvisers are ones that are people that are able to not judge themselves in the moment of the choices they're making, because if you start judging the thing you just did after you've done it, then you're not present. And then judging your scene partner, that's pretty typical of like, this scene didn't work because this person messed me up. And it's like, well, how about, that person, if they made a weak choice instead of a bad choice, instead of a wrong choice, they made a weak one. Well, weak can become strong. So let's see how, if you're their teammate, try to lift them up instead of saying they're bad. That's bad. They made a wrong choice, and I'm gonna write this scene off. So I'm gonna now play ironic and just kind of like wink to the audience, like, get a load of this guy as we continue to play. And I think, and this is all from experience, I've learned like that specific idea. And like, so I think it's someone who's has the courage to go out and not judge the things that are happening. So they're just taking it in, listening, of course, listening with your whole body, and understanding like even if you are the best listener out there, I doubt somebody who's amazing at something is walking around all the time talking about how good they are at listening. You know what I mean? Because then I feel like you cut yourself off from being able to learn more, at least in that avenue, that specific avenue of whatever you think you're amazing at, whoever it is, whatever. I mean, it's good to have, it's good to feel good about yourself, but you just don't want to like get so high and mighty in your ego that you stop. Like, I've seen it so many times with improvisers who think they're amazing, or I assume they think they're amazing. I can't tell what people are thinking, but when they go on stage with somebody else, they're playing from a level of, I walked on stage and I am amazing. So whatever this person's going to do, it's not going to be nearly as good as what I'm going to do. So I'll let them go. I'll take what they're saying, but then I'm going to go do my own thing, and then it's, so I think being able to really be open enough to, because it's so joyful to see like a combination of players on stage that have never played before. And one is really just like a high level of improv. They've been playing for a while, or they just have that natural talent. But somebody else is not. They're still learning. They're still at the early stages, but the choices they're making are almost more pure because they've never made this choice before. And so they're not pulling from like their own experience. They're pulling from, their own experience of improv scenes. I know they're pulling from experience from their life, but they're pulling something completely fresh and new that stronger player, that player who's got tenure, can then take, and we can build it together and make it even more fun, and it's like, so I think somebody who's I guess another trait would be somebody who's open to like everything and everyone, and open to the stage. And I guess that goes back to not judging, because I feel like if you're judging somebody else, or the scene didn't work because it was their fault, I feel like that also is because you're only judging yourself for the fact that you weren't able to save it, and or save it. The other thing I can't. Well, I guess this would be the last thing, or not the last, but there are probably other. Like I said, it's a big question, but
yeah, it is.
Being able to like, when I'm talking specifically performing improv right now, when I so many thoughts going through my head. Okay, so when you take the stage, when a player takes a stage in front of an audience, the show has started, in my opinion. The moment you take it, it's not when you get the suggestion and you all shake it off or whatever. It's not after the opening. It's the moment you take the stage. So all of that from the moment you take it to the end when the lights go down, or I guess when you bow and walk off, if you bow, depending on the team, depending on whatever the philosophies of that school is, that is all a show. So and from experience, like starting out, I think I probably walked up, not really considering that, and then getting the suggestion, and then the show would start for me.
Hmm.
But I've I've been a part of teams that this is not Herald really. This is more of like indie team stuff, but part of teams who allowed themselves to let the show dictate, or the night, or the mood, or the presence of the theater. Man, talking about all this, just like I miss it so much.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
oh man, it's crazy. But uh, the mood of that whole experience, it's like that can show you where your show is going. And even before you get to the suggestion asking, somebody trips, right? And then it's like, or doesn't trip and fall face down, but they trip and they stumble for a second. That stumble, if you're paying attention to your team to the whole night, and the audience caught it, audience catches, by the way, I mean, if listeners don't know this, or viewers don't know this, audience, they catch everything. So you'll at least, and if you reference that stumble, like either at the end of the show or during the show, or whatever it is, like all of it can be incorporated if we're really listening to it, and it's like, I mean, I was on a team, there was a period of time we didn't get suggestions, and because we didn't need to, we would just go on and then and just start the show, and whatever happens. And I've seen plenty of other teams do that. It wasn't a new idea, but
Sure.
but because like getting the suggestion is kind of like, I think it's an old throwback to like proving to the audience that it is improvised. But I mean, it's such a compliment every time someone comes up to you and says, like, that was planned, right? That trip at the beginning was planned, the way you all incorporated that into the whole show, like that was all planned. And
Yeah, I was
no,
gonna
it wasn't.
say
You were just paying attention. What was that?
the good old trip effect, where someone trips on stage and so then everyone trips on stage.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. I don't know if you've heard the story. I think it may have been opening night, or it was some team. I think it was opening night. They were performing in like during the opening number, one of the guys fell into the pit,
Uh-huh.
like literally just fell into the orchestra pit. And so then the rest of the team proceeded to fall into the orchestra pit right after that.
I
So
mean, that's
it's like
great.
a good example of yes anding.
Yeah, I mean, truly, like, and that is like, we're a unit. Like, that's not, and that's also something I kind of I glossed over earlier, but in the listening, but it's almost like we're all the one ear. We're all listening together. We're all in this together, and nobody's better than anyone else. We're not even, it shouldn't even be thinking about like better, any of that. It's just like, we're here to do a show, to have an experience, really. I personally, I'll say this, and I do believe it. I don't know if I always remember to adhere to it, and I think if I did, it would probably make even me a stronger player. But I definitely don't go for, laughter is not the goal, in my opinion. I think it's to have an experience. And I mean, some of my favorite improv, it's when, it can be hilarious, and then all of a sudden something happens that is poignant, and then we're all of a sudden in this. And as long as it's treated with, it's with reverence, and not just kind of taken as like, oh well, that's stupid that there's this thing, let's get back to the jokes. That's what I feel like a lot of people won't allow, and it's fine. Some people are doing it for just pure comedy, and because I've had a lot of these conversations about improv with team members and whatnot over the years, of why are we doing this, and it's all individual and different. I think it's important for a team to have that conversation, to tell, because if the person I'm playing with is not interested in doing something that's not about comedy, that is okay with me. I just need to know it, because if I don't know that, I won't. If I might try to, or not try to do, but if I find myself in a certain scene, or I have an idea but it's not necessarily a joke, I may, call somebody else out into the scene, or I won't judge a person for not going with me on this poignant journey. Not to say that most of the improv I do is nothing to do with poignancy. It's all just comedy.
Oh, don't I know? Speaking of that, it's interesting because I still remember when I played on Honeymoon that one time, and I was so tickled that you asked me to play. It was so fun.
Oh yeah,
But it also comes into this idea of like I remember at one point, and I told Jafet this story too, which is funny. And he's like, "You've told me multiple times," because I just keep remembering it. There was literally a scene. I don't know if you remember it or not, but you were sitting on a chair and you were like, "Do you want to come sit on my lap?" And I literally in that moment was like, "Sure." I had no idea what was happening or what
sure.
was going on at all, but I learned also the way honeymoon plays. I've picked up on it relatively quickly by the end. Anyways, I picked up on it. I was like, "Oh, there's a lot of wordplay. I get it." Um, but at that moment, I literally went, I don't know if Nate has an idea. I have no idea what's going on, but I trust that I will be supported in whatever decision I make here. And
Hmm.
so that's, I think that kind of goes back to this idea of when you were talking about like, it's not about like necessarily being funny or being like a talented performer. It's about understanding that the goal is to play along with others, play well with different
Yep.
people. And so it's like, that was one of those moments where I was like, I've never played with you guys on stage, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I was like, Nate just asked me to come sit on his lap, so my answer to that is gonna be yes, of course, because it's yes and. But
Sure.
two, I'm sure he's got an idea, and if not, I'm just gonna go sit on his lap and just go with it. And that was also, you were getting they were switching hair. You had alopecia or something, and they were switching hair from
Sounds about
one.
right.
It was a
You know,
wild scene.
that show is online somewhere.
I know. I've downloaded it. Trust me.
It was your
Uh,
birthday, wasn't it?
it was my birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Also,
great.
the suggestion was toucan, which is spelled wrong, by the way, on the YouTube
Is
channel.
it
But
really?
that's a
That's
whole nother
probably
story.
it was most likely me. Mac McLugie also uploads our honeymoon shows, so it could have been him, but it was probably me. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's Tucan is what it's spelled like when we know that's not how you spell toucan. But it was like literally, I figured it out right away because it was like this. I think you got the suggestion, and they were like toucan. You're like one or two can, and I was like, all right, I see where this is going already.
Well, we yeah, I mean, yes, honeymoon is I mean puns. If puns had a place in improv, it would be honeymoon.
Just quick, kind of wrap up questions before we get into the big question that I already
Okay.
briefed you on. What is your or some of your favorite like types of improv, whether it's long form, short form, genre, narrative, musical, whatever,
You
and
mean
any short form like favorite kind of games that you've ever played, or like warm up games or games during shows?
okay? Do you mean playing or watching?
Oh, good question. No one's asked that. I would say playing, I think, is what.
Okay.
But if there's a style that you really like watching that maybe you don't like playing as much, I'd love to hear about that too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I actually do. I'm such an improv. I guess I'm a nerd for like. I really enjoy a lot of different styles. Like when I saw TJ and Dave from Chicago, they've got I don't know how many shows, 8 shows or something on I think it's on Vimeo that you can buy. But even before that, like I had like 20 something shows. Some guy would go to IO Chicago and record every show and then sell the DVDs
Hmm.
online. This is
Hmm.
before like digital was
Right.
really a platform. And
Just yesterday, I was buying those IO Chicago DVDs.
yeah, right, exactly.
Just yesterday.
Doesn't it seem like it was just yesterday?
Yeah. Seems like
But
just yesterday IO was open.
yes, I know. It's actually sometimes I forget that it has closed. Like sometimes I'm like, I assume it sticks out of my mind so much. Like I'm talking about LA, but
Yeah.
all of it. Like I forget where we are sometimes, like what state of the world that we are in.
Yeah.
But
Well, even now, since we're not anywhere, it's like it feels like it still exists.
yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. Um so TJ and Dave does 2-person long form. Like the listening that they have is it's almost uncomparable to other players. They're
Hmm.
masterful at what they do, and it's like a play. I mean, I've heard that people have taken at least one time. I think it's happened more than once, but like what's the word? When you write something and when you watch something and you write it down, I can't remember the word is. Document was not anyway. They scripted the whole show
Hmm.
and then cast it and actually did a play based on a 2-person show.
Oh
that
wow.
TJ and Dave did. Yeah, it's like that's
transcribed.
Transcribed. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, well, that's because that's nice. We're a team, so you help me. You're lifting
Exactly.
up.
Improv for 101s.
That's right. That's right. So so I like a lot of different styles. I like playing different styles. I've done a little bit of the TJ and Dave style stuff. Like I've never been on an earnest team. I mean, most of the teams, every team I've been on has been really focused on like, or I guess one of our focuses would be, you know, the humor of things. I mean, it's just how it is. But the team I was on, we never broke up. We just haven't played in a long time. It's called Bowie, and it's 7 of us, and we Jason Pardo, he used to be on King 10, was our coach. We asked him to coach us, but it was the most like this is the best way I can explain it. It was the most adult team I'd ever been on, in the way of like the maturity level of all of us as improvisers. Like I felt, and I don't think I'm the only one to say this about themselves, I felt like the weakest link, which is a great place to be, because I feel like I'm now learning from everybody I'm with, and I don't like I feel like I want to do well, so I don't let them down, kind of thing. And again, it's hard to quantify, you know, who's better and who's worse, or who's stronger and who's weaker, whatever. But because we all have different strengths in different areas and different weaknesses in different areas. But that team was very much like, it was birthed out of just the love for improv and a love for form and saying. So what we did was we created a form that we wanted to play, but we didn't want to get bogged down in any rules, and we didn't want to explain anything to the audience, you know, to come out and be like, we're going to do this tonight, and it's going to start like this, and then we're going to have this. So we created kind of a half form that would then open up halfway through and kind of like be focused on like the world we've built, and then, you know, callbacks and all that stuff. Try not to create new scenes based off nothing, but there was this is really kind of like, it's got a particular kind of like maturity to the improv that it was like it was all kind of character based, in the sense of like a lot of, I think almost all of us, you'd react how your character would react more than like how you would react, but you were mindful to be able to do that because everybody was on the same page allowing that to happen. We weren't trying to wrap the show up in a certain amount of time, I mean, obviously your time sometimes, like, yeah, you get lights pulled, so it's on almost any show, so it's like impossible. You can't just go and go. But we weren't so conscious of like all of the rules and the like, this needs to be here. If we don't get to this by then, we have to then do this or whatever. It was just and also we didn't do like this also is something I carried into Honeymoon, like basically my only personal rule for Honeymoon. But we did this in Bowie first, which was no sweeps. So no sweep edits. Like I don't mind them. I don't judge them when other teams do them. I just feel like, again, going back to like when you step on stage, your show starts, I feel like sweep edits, I mean, when you're pulling the ripcord, if you are I guess the ripcord, yeah, if you have to get to the next scene, and especially if you're doing like a herald or a form that demands it, like sweep edit, like get out of there, you know, like don't hang out in the scene just because you don't want to do a sweep edit. But there are so many other types of edits, or you can sweep in a different way. You can sweep thematically. You can there's an infinite number of possibilities of how to transition your show from one scene to the next. So Bowie to me was like, it kind of was, I call it like, it's like the creme de la creme of like of improv that I've done, in the way of like how we approached it, because it was with a seriousness, but also with plenty, I mean, it was all playful, you know, but like we all strived for something specific. You're asking about warm-ups. I love warm-ups, and I don't think everybody does. And I think they help me. I think there's a certain level an improviser gets to where, and I might be wrong. This is all my experience. So take this with a grain of salt, whoever's listening, watching, and listening. Or maybe this is on mute. But the what was I talking about? I was talking about
Warm-ups.
yeah, the 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 importance of warm-ups to me is it's less, it is good to get the cobwebs out of your brain, but it's less about as you go on in the years and continue to improvise, it's less about trying to make sure that your mind's sharp enough for the moment, though that is completely what warm-ups are used for, or the impetus for them, why we even start them in the first place. But the togetherness of the, like, unifying yourself with the group. People come late, they miss warm-ups, and it's kind of like whatever, like that person missed, that person always misses warm-ups, that is fine. But I still think you can have a stronger shows over a period of time. I don't think you're going to see results from warm-ups and know exactly why it was because you warmed up that this or that thing happened. And that's the thing about improv, is a lot of it's so elusive. It's hard to pinpoint exactly how to explain it, or how to tell yourself, like, oh, well, this was the formula for a good show. We did this. I didn't eat before the show, so now that must mean I don't ever eat before shows. Like, I don't think all that stuff matters as much. I think that's more traditional stuff, like tradition stuff, where like sports players, not lucky socks and whatnot. Like, I feel like I understand why people don't like warm-ups when they've done it for so long, because some warm-ups I feel like become useless after a certain point. Yes. But I feel like it's more important to group together and even talk about anything. You don't have to talk about the show, don't talk about improv. But my favorite style of warm-up, there's nothing beats this. And I don't think everybody will agree with me, which is totally fine, because everyone has their own style. And it's hard to, like, when you're joining a new team, I'll put this out there. Not everybody wants to do this, which again, yeah, I get it. But I call them brown water scenes. But when you turn the faucet on and it takes a second, at least I grew up in Kansas.
Get all the crap out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it's good to do that, by the way, even if you live in the city, even if you have clear water, do that. Don't fill up your glass immediately. Let it drain for a second. But yeah, so doing really swift scenes, like cutting them within 40 seconds, but just to get out, like, just blah initiations. Like, I don't know how many times that specific thing has helped me so much, because I feel like when I don't do it, I've had nights where I have, like, the way I just initiated this first scene of the show definitely was a brown water initiation. It was one of the easy low-hanging fruit initiations, or something that just doesn't spark my creativity and it doesn't help get me off on the right foot. And now I'm judging myself and I'm thinking about something else. But like those brown water scenes, I'm not going to do any of those initiations I just did in the brown water scenes when we get to the show. At least
it's also like, if you have a joke, that you want to use, go ahead and do it now, because it's not going to be funny later.
I mean, seriously, like anyone who's pre-planning jokes, like that's for something else. Like, that's not for improv. That's annoying to me. Like, when somebody thinks that's a good idea. I mean, like, I understand, like, trying it, and I understand, like, when you're learning and whatnot. I'm more judging the people who have been doing improv for a while. It's like, why front load something with a joke? I mean, honestly, like, there's so many other avenues to have scripted jokes, stand up being one of them.
So this is the final improv summit question, which is the one that is the reason why I'm doing this whole improv summit, which, like I said, I kind of told you about it beforehand. But a lot of times I get people who know that I do a lot of improv, and they always come up to me and they say, Spencer, where should I take improv? And to me, it's a hard question to answer, because there's a lot that goes into answering that question. And so my question for you is, regarding your thoughts on that question, like, what's like a tip or some advice, or a couple of things that you could throw into people if they ask this question, where should I take improv? What would be something you would offer to them?
I mean, I think you pegged it definitely on what is their goal, because I'm not knocking that other theater that I started at, Groundlings. Like, Groundlings is great for what they are doing. It's just not for me. But I didn't know it until I went there. I mean, it's sad to say that I had to spend X amount of money to figure that out. But knowing you have options is good. So if you go and try something, and it doesn't fit for you, know that you have other options, that it's not the only thing. Excuse me. But I would say, yeah, really examining why you want to do it. So if you want to do it as a resume builder, I mean, like IO's not open anymore, but I would say don't go to IO, because like IO is great and people know what that is on your resume. I'm sure a lot of casting directors, but if you want a really good resume builder, I think UCB was the most popular, out of all of them, and that was the one that was most trendy at the time when IO was still open, and that seems to fit more. And also, it probably, I mean, I've never taken a UCB class, so I shouldn't really speak to it, but I was going to say it's for people that aren't. No, I shouldn't say this. This is just going to be a judgment. But it's just more. I feel like there's more comfortability there, because I didn't even mention space work today, but I think space work is a huge part of showmanship when you're doing improv. Not saying every scene needs space work, but it can be a lost art in a lot of places, and I see it minimally at UCB shows, and I think that I think if you're looking to have all the tools in your toolbox, you should go to more than one place. But it matters why they want to do it, because like if they've never taken improv before and they go to Groundlings, but they don't want to do what Groundlings is doing, they don't want to do SNL, they don't want to get into big character, go to a 10 every time, then I would say you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. And you're going to think that all improv is like that. It's like when audiences go see a show that they've never seen, or an audience member's never seen improv before, but they went once and it was awful and they'll never go again. That's unfortunate, because that's like going to a basketball game and the team that you wanted to win loses, and then you're like, well, basketball's boring, or basketball.
Or like the question of like people going like, I went to this improv show and it was nothing like Whose Line, so I didn't like it. And it's like, Whose Line's a specific style of improv, and then you have to like go into that conversation.
And I feel like Second City does a little bit of that, but what was the other school? Comedy Sports. Like Comedy Sports will home in your skill of short form. It's like there are certain places for different styles, and if you don't know what you want to do, you could audit a class. Not every place allows auditing, but most places do. Or go see shows at each place. That doesn't cost you barely anything, sometimes zero. So it's like that will kind of put you into why or what you're wanting to do. But I also say like, if you're hemming and hawing and just don't know, just choose one and then go with that. Especially if you have the money and you have the time. It's not going to hurt. Whatever you take is not going to, hopefully, I say that, but I'm talking specifically about talent. It's not going to hurt your talent. It's not going to hurt your skill. If you take a class and it's not for you, you'll still have gleaned something. And if you're listening to everything that the teacher's saying, and I mean listening, with what's going on, you'll learn a lot too. And like acting and writing would be like the two professions that I can think of at the moment that why people do improv. There are a slew of people that aren't in those two professions that take improv, but those are the two professions that are very common. And if you take an awful class that did not, like, you had a bad teacher, but you've heard the school is so great, but this teacher was awful, try a different teacher. Try to get your money back, I guess, if you really didn't learn anything. Try to get out of the class before it's over, but so you can get the refund. But I think those professions will still be benefited, like you pursuing those things. You'll still find benefit in bad classes or classes that you felt like didn't work for you, because you learn so much. You see, so you know how not to start an improv class, or now not to talk to somebody if you were going to teach them something. You know what I mean? Like so you can glean stuff. I'm not saying that's probably not why you're spending your money, but like, don't just throw it all away just because you had a bad experience. But it's hard to answer that question now too, because so many places are closed.
Well, a lot of stuff's online too, so it's almost interesting in another way, because you can kind of take classes from anywhere right now.
Well,
Like
that's
even stuff that you didn't really feel like you had access to from anywhere in the world. So you can take a bunch of different things and see what happens. It's also a different thing that Zoom improv or Google Meets improv is so different than in-person improv.
that's also like if you're introducing yourself to improv through the digital world, know that that's a form. That's going to be a form of improv. That is not all of improv, or your experiences with that will be it'll be specific to that. So it's very different when you're in front of an audience and you are able to use your legs and you are able to create a motif with 7 other people. You know, it's like hard to do like a what's the opening where we all become a picture? Tableau. It's tableau. That's what we called it anyways.
A word, not word painting, scene painting.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But you can't do that. We can conceptualize that. We can do a bunch of bats when we're on the digital realm, but it's harder to do an actual show. That doesn't mean you should be doing it if you want to. I mean, pursue it. If you want to do something, you have the means. There's no better time than the moment, in the present. But yeah, it's a different animal, a different beast than when you actually are, in the theater and being able to perform there.
I love it.
Yeah. I don't know if that would answer their question. Honestly, if somebody asked me that, I would just probably give the same type of answer and be like, at the end of it, be like, I don't know exactly what to tell you, but I think you should just be polite to yourself and to whatever you're taking, because it's going to take a little bit to try to figure it all out,
Yeah. Now you know how I feel every time I get this question. I'm like, where do I begin?
Yeah, I mean, really, but I think you already nailed it. Asking them what are they in it for? Like, what are they doing it for? Why did they ask you in the first place? And that'll probably guide you to be able to answer it better. But
for sure, always love hearing from you, Nate. All your advice. Do you have anything you want to pitch or plug? Anything like that?
Yeah, sure. I have a podcast that I do. It's called Thread Corner, that I produce. There it is right there. It's right here. It's an improvised podcast. I usually don't say that. I usually just let it speak for itself. But since this is this is all about improvising. You can find it on, I think, every platform. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I was going to say Spectrum. You can find it at Spectrum.
You can probably find it at Spectrum too. Why not?
Yeah, sure. But it's a podcast where myself, Megan Reesberg, and Macklin McLugie, I host, and they're the co-hosts, and we have guests on. But we're all characters, and it's a narrative. Every episode connects from the last episode, or seemingly does. But it's definitely a fun project. I would have never found if I hadn't discovered improv. If I hadn't done improv, like that's what I mean. Like when I said that earlier, like improv's like opened the door to so much. Like I'm the person I am now because I took improv classes. Like it started with a class and kept going, but like also the way I was, I mean, I know we're going backwards, and I don't need to keep on talking, but
no, it's all good.
Before I started improv classes, before I started changing, it changed my brain of my philosophy a lot. And not so much in the way of like the cult way of like, we're all here and this is the thing we're doing, and like, let's bring people in and that sort of thing. It's more of like the daily listening to people like we talked about, but also slight judgments, like slight judgments in everyday life. And I didn't realize that I had such a negative attitude, and it was subtle. That's the problem. If it was overt, you'd be more aware of it. But like the subtlety of just like judging something, judging that person based on what they're wearing, or that sounds so like cliche, but I mean like, they're in, I don't even know, but like judging this person because of this or because of that, like, or because they said that or they like that, and then like just writing them off. And like improv really opened my mind up, and maybe it was just a lesson that I already knew that I needed to relearn or something, but I wouldn't have been able to get there nearly as quickly if I was going to get there either way. But I don't know if I would have. I think it helped me really enjoy the humans again. Like and like,
Sure.
accepting everybody, like, and and there's definitely people in improv I was not always, I didn't always enjoy, but I enjoy the fact that that human being exists, as opposed to like being like that. They are. I'm gonna write them off. They're not worth my time, especially in today's world. We need to be as kind as we can, and just like recognize, like everyone else has a life too.
Hmm.
That sort of thing. So yeah,
Sure.
improv helped me in that way. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
the
love it.
podcast. Very
Great.
cool.
Yeah, perfect. We'll link to it. And this is my bad object work. I do it in every episode. It's my I'll type it in the links.
I mean, your weak object work, and actually,
Ah, you're right. I
your
did it. I said it. I said it.
that's based on the computer keyboard you have, which is like broken a little bit down like this, and the keys are up and down here. So
Yep.
see, we can all work. We can work it together.
I have to get it real close to my face so I can see it.
It's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you're right. Weak, not bad. Great. So final thing. I want to ask you. When you want to do an improv scene,
Let's do it.
you want location, relationship, or a word?
Location.
Location. A meat freezer.
Great.
Meat freezer.
Well, I'm gonna clock out early. I think just so I can make sure that you're okay, right? You've never closed before, Clint, but I just have a date and I want to make sure I get to it.
Yeah, Stanley. I think I got everything covered. I just the freezer I know has been kind of a little wonky lately, so I just want to make sure that it's supposed to be set at what 23 degrees Celsius.
It's 30 degrees Fahrenheit, but yes, it's been a little wonky lately because someone keeps setting the dial to a different. They keep freezing the meat too much, and then you know how long it takes to thaw.
2 hours and 25 minutes.
Great. Yes. Correct. Great. So all right. So I'm gonna leave it to you. Just make sure you lock up, and we've had some issues with the meat recently, as far as the quality of meat, people getting sick. So just make sure you do set it to 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
Great. Okay, so you're leaving now.
I have my coat on. My bag is packed. It's ready to go. I'm stepping out. Unless there's anything else you need. Is there any other questions you have?
No, I think I can handle it.
Okay. All right. Good. So I'm about to walk out, and you're still standing with the door open.
I got it. I've got it under control.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought you did until you said that. Every time you say you got it under control, Clint, there's no control whatsoever.
Okay, Stanley, let me try it again. Okay, ready?
Wait, what are we trying again?
I've got things under control.
Okay, that actually did convince me a little bit more casual. That was, except for at the end, it sounded like a whimper. Maybe be a little bit more self-confident about it.
Okay, all right, I'll try it again.
Okay.
Okay. I've got everything under. Please don't leave.
Clint, come on. I have to go, and you had that one. You had that. You said everything that encompasses the whole meat freezer and the butcher shop out front.
I know. I've never done it before, and I just don't. I would just much prefer if you were here to guide me.
I can't be here. I'm not going to be around forever, Clint.
But until then, Stanley, I don't see why not.
Just you got to fly sometime. You got to grow wings and use them. What? Say it again. Say it again, and finish the sentence. And with confidence, keep everything in there. That's good.
The everything's okay, or the please don't leave me.
Try the please don't leave me, actually.
Okay. All right.
Because if you had the right tone, I would stay. I would know you have everything under control.
Okay. All right. Let me try it again. Please don't leave me.
Okay, now try everything's under control.
The same tone.
Well, with the fact that I want you to believe it, Clint.
Okay, you want me to believe it, Stanley? Okay. Everything.
Yes. Yes. Go on.
Everything's under control.
Okay, then I'll leave it to you. I was gonna stay because I did also think that second reading of Please Don't Leave was heartbreaking enough, but I believe you do everything under control, Clint.
No, please don't leave.
Okay, well now what am I supposed to do?
Stay.
Maybe I can call her and have her come here. It's a date after all.
No, don't, you don't have to do. Yeah, great. That was great.